Senator Cortez Masto, thanks for joining us on Rising.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. So today is actually a pretty, this is a tough week because we've got a lot happening with families down at the border and frankly, families that are separated all over the country trying to be reunited. What's your understanding about where we are right now with the government complying with the judge's order to reunite these families?
Yeah, so what we have, and thank goodness the judge is there. I think there's an important role that this court is playing, which is that oversight. And constantly bring the administration in and ensuring they're working to reunify these families. It's an important role. So what I've seen, some of the families are going to be reunified of the almost, 3,000 parents and children that were separated. And when I had the opportunity to talk with Secretary Nielsen, and that was yesterday, this was my concern, was what are you gonna do for those 463 parents? You should be bringing them back to this country, paroling them back here so that we can reunite them with their children. And what she told me was that those parents waived their right to be reunified, voluntarily gave up their right to be reunified with their children.
There's some question that perhaps they didn't fully understand what the government was offering them when they signed
Absolutely,
the
and that's my point exactly, and that was, to her, that was a total lie. Yeah. Because here's why I know this, a couple of reasons. I went down to Port Isabel Detention Facility. I sat and talked with 6 mothers and 4 fathers. And the first question they all had for me, because they're not getting any information, is where are my children and when can I be reunified with them? Of course, yeah. Right? That's the number one thing. And so here's what I know, and this is the documentation I wanted to see, and that's coming out now, are those parents were deported. They had no idea what they were signing was that they were not going to be reunified. There's no doubt in my mind, and what I'm seeing is that some of those parents thought they were signing something that was going to reunify them. This administration and Homeland Security and HHS, they manufactured this crisis, right? We started down this path of this manufactured crisis. Never had an intent to reunify these families. So for those parents that were deported without their children, what was the intent of our government to do with these kids?
Right.
Were they going to adopt them out? Leave them in foster care? I mean, we don't even do that in our own country. We have laws in our own country that look out for the best interests of children. We don't terminate somebody's parental right and give an agency a bureaucratic authority to decide, I'm going to terminate your parental rights permanently. The judges have to make those determinations, and we don't do that lightly in our courts in the United States.
Speaking with a federal public defender yesterday who was explaining to me from their understanding that while you have a right to have an attorney, you only get to have one if you can afford one. That's right. So what happens to the 1-year-old, 3-year-old, 10-year-old that's in court but doesn't have an attorney? How is that case adjudicated?
Well, that's just it. And how is a judge able to, even if there is a judge even involved, how are they able to get information from that child? Who, by the way, if it's a toddler, you're not going to get any information. And if their first language is Spanish or some other language and not English, there is a barrier.
Is there anything that the Senate or the administration can do about that?
So here's a couple of things that have been happening. And let me talk on the private sector. There have been incredible organizations that have come together to raise money so that the legal programs that are out there, legal aid programs, and so many wonderful programs like that have enough money to hire attorneys to represent these children and these parents. And that's fabulous. And we need to continue to do that. Along with that, my colleagues and I have introduced, Senator Harris and Senator Merkley, we introduced the Reunite Act. And part of the Reunite Act is, one, prevent any administration in the future, including this one, from separating parents, but also mandate that there be an advocate or an attorney or somebody there representing the best interests of these children and these parents. And then third, make sure that there is a new not a new agency, there is the federal agencies that are working, there's 3 of them that are not coordinating and talking about the reunification, that they have some sort of interagency staff that are just working on that coordination between the 3 of them to reunify. That's basically it. Mm-hmm. And it is so important because it really protects the rights of these families and these children and gives them caseworkers and or attorneys that are going to be there with them. But here's why this is a benefit. Because if Part of the concern is releasing these families and releasing these parents into the community. We want to make sure that they come back to their court if it's an immigration issue or an asylum issue, so that a judge can make a determination. We know that if there's a caseworker attorney involved, 100% they'll be back. They'll come to court. And I'll tell you what, there are alternatives to detention. I know it. I've seen them as a prosecutor. Ankle bracelet costs $4. Yeah, you can release them in the community and they come back. So you have a number of things that you can do to ensure, if this is this administration's concern that they're not going to show up in court, that they will.
So what happens if the administration doesn't comply by today?
A couple of things. They'll be held in contempt of court by a judge, but and I'm not going to say what this judge is going to do. I can just tell you what I've seen in the past. The authority of a judge is to hold them in contempt of court. But the biggest hammer that this judge has right now is just the jurisdiction over this administration, to constantly pull them into court, question what they are doing, get the documents from them, and make sure that these families are being reunified. That, to me, is the strongest hammer that this court has, is to keep that jurisdiction open, keeping the hearing open, and constantly questioning and pulling this administration and these federal agencies in and asking them, what are you doing? Give me the documents, show me how you're reunifying, show me the data, show me the statistics. And we can continue to work for those 463 parents that have been deported already. It's something for the judge to also question. Now, how are you going to reunify them with their children?
So a tougher place where you may not have common ground is, what do you do about ICE? You have some colleagues who say abolish it. You have, I think even in the Reunite bill, you're talking about moving maybe $50 million from ICE to pay for other things. What happens to ICE? You want to abolish it?
Yeah, let me tell you my experience, and this is why it's going to inform my decision. As Attorney General, I work with Homeland Security's investigation. We worked on child pornography issues. We worked on sex trafficking to prevent that. We worked on going after national criminal organization, national international crime, intellectual property. What I have seen this administration do is take the money from that important function that is important for our national security, and take that fund and give it to an inhumane, unnecessary deportation force that is going after separating families. It's outrageous. And to me, that Homeland Security investigation piece that goes after that international crime and sex traffickers and child pornography, it's important. I want them to continue to have the budget, and I want them to continue to be funded. That's why, if you remember the letter that was sent to Secretary Nielsen from the SACs, or the special agents in charge of those investigations across the country, said the same thing. We need the money. This is important, and you're taking it away from us and giving it to a deportation force. To me, that's where the scrutiny starts. Let's stop taking the money away from where it's needed and stop giving it to this unnecessary deportation force. The other side to this is, I know and I've seen, there's some rogue agents out there. There's some rogue agents that are abusing their position. As Attorney General and somebody who respects the law and our rule of law, they should be held accountable. And to me, that's part of our scrutiny and our oversight. We appropriate the money in the budget, and we should have that oversight in how it's being spent.
Thanks for joining us on the Hill, and we will be right back with more of Rising after this.